chaos. It comes from chaos. That's a good point, and we are going to look on that and possibly answer that question in this presentation. Daniela, Daniel, do you ever heard about any of these arguments about that? Okay, sorry, now you want to share anything?
Um, I don't remember. I guess I need to come closer. I do remember a few things because I've been going through the same apologetics books. There's been quite a few because I know in the scriptures it said something like the stars in the sky that cannot be numbered, and like scientists would have like early estimates of like how many stars in the sky, like basically counted like visible to the naked eye. And then when the telescopes and like stuff that start being invented, that's when I realized that how many stars you can see in observe the universe is like the number is so big. I think it's like 10 to like 200 power, or it's I think it's like one followed by was either 20 or 22 zeros, like sort of like a very, 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 very big number. So realizing that the scriptures were lying and talking about that the number of stars in the skies cannot be numbered. And I said even if they had like a supercomputer to like count the stars in the sky, it would still take like years upon years like for it to finish. So different things like that shows that the scriptures is not really a coincidence. And then I think there was another one speaking about the earth itself. It was like its distance from the sun, like just being like just at the right distance to like support life, and like having so much water and so on to support life. So even when scientists with their telescopes are looking out for like life on other planets, they're not really finding anything. It's like they're not really finding planets that either have like the right distance from their sun, or it's either too big or too small, it doesn't have like a magnetic field, so therefore it doesn't like have an atmosphere and so on and so forth. And I realize that what we are on is like truly special as a planet, and that cannot be, by per chance. So that's what I can think about from the top of my head based off what I've read so far. All right.
Brilliant. So we are aware, or some of us are aware of some of these arguments. And as just to summarize a little bit, Mr. Narrative, we were talking about design by biology and also the fine tuning of how the Earth is positioned and our atmosphere, our life, and it's too finely tuned to be out of randomness, out of just happenstance, but it shows that there was some precision there and some doubling happening with our universe that leads us to believe that there is a creator. And so we're going to focus on the traditional arguments. And I'm just going to briefly mention some of the non-traditional arguments. We won't get into that today because of time. And one of the non-traditional arguments is a metaphysical argument. The next one is the nomological argument, the axiological argument, linguistic argument, and the anthropological argument. And so at another time, we will go through these different arguments, but today we're going to just focus on three arguments, which is the cosmological, design, and moral argument. And so to kick us off, I want us to watch a video. Let me watch a video. Share the screen.
I'm sure it's a good. You sure it's a good post?
Yeah, you're a co-host.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, this here. Green screen.
Does God exist? Or is the material universe all that is, or ever was, or ever will be? One approach to answering this question is the cosmological argument. It goes like this. Whatever began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore, the universe has a cause. Is the first premise true? Let's consider. Believing that something can pop into existence without a cause is more of a stretch than believing in magic. At least with magic, you've got a hat and a magician. And if something can come into being from nothing, then why don't we see this happening all the time? No, everyday experience and scientific evidence confirm our first premise. If something begins to exist, it must have a cause. But what about our second premise? Did the universe begin, or has it always existed? Atheists have typically said that the universe has been here forever. The universe is just there, and that's all. First, let's consider the second law of thermodynamics. It tells us the universe is slowly running out of usable energy, and that's the point. If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now. The second law points us to a universe that has a definite beginning. This is further confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein presented his general theory of relativity. This allowed us, for the first time, to talk meaningfully about the past history of the universe. Next, Alexander Friedmann and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, predicted that the universe is expanding. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble measured the red shift in light from distant galaxies. This empirical evidence confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. It was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension. However, not everyone is fond of a finite universe, so it wasn't long before alternative models popped into existence. But one by one, these models failed to stand the test of time. More recently, three leading cosmologists, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, proved that any universe which has on average been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning. This even applies to the multiverse, if there is such a thing. This means that scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model. It's quite plausible then that both premises of the argument are true. This means that the conclusion is also true. The universe has a cause. And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe. It must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful, much like God. The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist.
Just watched a video on the cosmological argument, and there are many cosmological arguments that are out there. But the one that we choose, and I think one of the most popular one, is the column cosmological argument, which is pushed heavily by Dr. William Lane Craig. And so credit to him and his video. and the cosmological argument. And I would just want to throw it out there. From the video, what have we learned? Can somebody tell me something that has jumped out to them from the video? Anybody? How about those online?
That you know, good understanding his philosophy and logic, where you might say that the premise and then there's like the premises and then you have to think about what you're doing. Think about working through the premise and then you maybe the cosmos. Since you deal with the cosmos, you definitely need to have like a good understanding of like physics when it talks about Einstein and general relativity. So this type of evidence might be very difficult for somebody outside of sciences, or I guess outside of physics to grasp. So, but even though there's plenty others that probably don't involve that much physics there, but it's like something you have to think about like logically. So it's not that simple and like a lot of critical thinking is needed to work out to say that God definitely exists.
That's right. And so, yes, this is heavily science-based, and this theory is, I don't know if anybody has anything on Zoom wants to add or what you have gathered from the video. Anybody? Dr. Buckland or
Yeah,
Um, oh,
yes. One of the things that really stood out for me is that the universe had a finite beginning, that it started at a point in time, and that even if one were to say, for argument's sake, that the multiverse theory is probable, it still would not help the situation because the same argument that proves that this universe is finite and had a beginning will also prove that if there are other universes out there that we don't know of, they too had a finite beginning. And so we come back to square one, that since the universe had a beginning, it must have had a cause. And so we need to find out what was the adequate cause that brought the universe into existence, because nothing produces nothing. So there had to be an adequate cause for the universe that we know to have come into existence.
yeah.
oh,
For me, one thing that stood out was they're saying that for anything to be that began to exist, that there needs to be an adequate cause. So you'd have to prove that something began to exist, because some people will retort then, okay, the universe was not eternal, but then who made God? But what's the definition of God? Did God begin to exist? And is there evidence that an immaterial being needs a cause? Because either you'll have to stop somewhere to and define that entity that is eternal as some type of, okay, so an eternal being would be God. I'm hoping I'm making sense. But the question is like, if you know how to respond, I guess, from that law saying that if anything had begun to exist, there needs to be a cause. So the question would ask like, who made God? I also had written down something about them mention about the expansion of the universe. And I found it very interesting because there are different passages for those who are reading the Bible very deeply that mentions about God spreading the heavens like a tent and stretching it like a tent to live in. And then people are actually seeing evidence of an expansion, just like when you open up a tent and it's expanding outwards. So that's another scientific foreknowledge that's in the Bible before people could have found it out based on what I'm seeing. So yeah, those are the two things that came up for me when I watched the video.
oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
No
Great
problem.
insight. Great insights. And so we are going to. This is This is actually a powerful argument. And as I said, the cosmological argument, there are many persons who you would come upon. Most are scientific in terms of they watch things, so they fully don't understand some scientific stuff, but because of some atheists that are scientists, such as Richard Dawkins, Lawrence Krauss, and these new atheists that push certain agendas, um, atheistic agendas, that there's no proof for God. Someone said that, but we can also show that there are evidences for God, and one of these evidences we can use the same scientific evidences to prove that there is God. And so I'm going to look at the cosmological argument. You have the Leibniz argument, you have the Aquinas cosmological argument, but I'm just going to focus on the Kalam cosmological argument. And so the first premise, before I reach there are certain things that Dr. Buckland mentioned that is key. We're going to look on the different premises. What is a premise to begin with? Because what I've noticed even in my research, my reading, is that there are many scientists who are great scientists but are poor philosophers. And so when we get into certain things as the existence of God, we're getting into philosophy. And even when these scientists are talking about the beginning of the universe and what could cause it or whether the universe is eternal, we're heading into the realm of metaphysics or philosophy per se. And what we have learned from last week also is that because a person is good in one area and an expert in one area doesn't mean that they're an expert in all areas. And so because somebody is a good biologist doesn't mean that he's a good physicist or a mathematician or a geologist or a person that is a linguist, a great linguist or so forth. And so because of all these atheists, they call them the four horsemen, and they are great in different fields. Richard Dawkins is a good biologist. It doesn't mean that he is an expert in the things pertaining to theology or expert in the things pertaining to philosophy. And so we're going to just briefly look on the premises of the cosmological argument. It says whatever begins to exist has a cause. So whatever begins to exist have a cause. And so what are premises? Does anybody have an idea what premises are? One. Alright, so premises are basically different, one word sentences that comes together to lead to a conclusion. And so premises are different arguments rather that comes together that give a conclusion. So for example, Jain, all men are mortal. Jain is a man, therefore Jain is mortal. So the conclusion is that you are mortal, right? And so we have different types of premises, we have different types of arguments that consist of premises. So premises are like the building blocks that lead to a conclusion. And so if the premises are faulty, then the conclusion is faulty. For example, Jain is, for example, there's this thing that, for example, if God exists, then evil should not exist. Now, when we look at certain premises, we can find out if the premises are true to see if the conclusion is true. And so a conclusion can be false based on the premises, and that's called modus ponens, in which you look deductively on the premises, and after which you decide if the conclusion follows logically from the premises. I hope everybody's following. So the first premise is whatever begins to exist have a cause. The second premise is the universe begins exist. And the third premise, share my screen. One minute. Share my screen. Yes, we can purpose too, but the cause here mostly deals with, so we can put purpose, but the cause here mostly deals with that something bring the thing into existence. So you can think about purpose because most things that come into existence that we see around ourselves, there's a purpose why it's there. There's a purpose for why we build the chair, and so but the cause here mostly speaks to something bringing something into existence. So most things that we see, yes. So most things that we see where that comes into existence is contingent on something else, meaning that a something brings it into existence. The chair is here because a man made the chair. The laptop is here because a man made the laptop. We have YouTube, which began to exist. It has a time that it came to be. It was caused by somebody inventing that. So the first premise, and this is why this argument is also very strong, because the first premise is saying that whatsoever begins to exist really have a cause. There's something that brought into existence. And we have the second premise now. The universe begins to exist. So the universe had a cause. So the universe has a cause. That's a conclusion. And so what persons would normally attack is the second premise. The first premise is a very strong premise. The first argument is very strong. The second premise that persons try to attack. And as you saw in the video that many persons are proposing other ideas about the universe, trying to escape the standard model of the universe. And so what the video was even explaining and the video was speaking about is that um, based on the standard model of the universe, we realize that the universe began to exist at a certain time. And based on development and discovery of the second law of thermodynamics, that the universe, the energy, the use of the energy is winding down, it's running out. And based on that, if something is winding down or winding out, it must have been wound up. And so if something is depleting, there must be, at one point, there was an abundance of energy of that thing. We also have the expansion of the universe that they mentioned that Hubble and other scientists realized that the universe was expanding. And as Dr. Buckman was mentioning, that there are scriptures that mention this, but before we look at scriptures, when we approach first, they already don't believe in a God. So we're just going to stay mostly with the evidences in here. Later on, we'll probably look at scriptures another session. So the universe, we have scientific proof that the universe began to exist. It existed at a point. And this is supported by the second law of thermodynamics. This is supported by the standard model of the universe. And the universe came from, some believe, a singularity, a single point in time, finite time, and then it expanded. And so that's what we were explaining, that the universe came from a point, a single finite point, and beyond that point there is no space, no time, no energy, no matter. There was, in other words, nothingness. And so, according to this premise, according to all the scientific evidences and discoveries that suggest that the universe began to exist, we can conclude that because everything that had a beginning has to have a cause, therefore the universe has a cause. Just as you were saying, Jain, how can order come out of disorder? Nothing cannot come from, something cannot come from nothing. If you have $0 in the bank book and you just go there, you're not going to see $1 million in the bank book. No matter how much mathematics you put down on the paper and wish it to be, that will not happen. We don't see people just pop in and just pop out to disappear and disappear into existence. So nothing just, anything don't just come from nothing. So what scientists have done, and there are persons such as Penrose Roger, who worked with Stephen Hawking, they propose different models. And why are they proposing these models? They want to escape from the fact that the universe had a beginning. And so many persons have proposed models such as the steady state model. Many have proposed models such as the oscillating universe. I think Roger Penrose proposed a model that is similar to the would fall under the oscillating universe. The universe bounces. And some believe that the universe contracts. And that's why it seems as if it has a beginning and then it just, expands, contracts and expands, a part of the oscillating. And some believe that the universe is eternal. It didn't have any beginning at all. But the more and more science evolved, the more and more it's proving that the universe did have a beginning. And if it does have a beginning, there has to be a cause. And that cause is God. Question?
What would be the argument against that it's eternal?
Against that it's eternal? So we can also use the scientific discoveries that has happened so far. And one of them, so we have a scientific argument against that it's eternal, which is evidences that shows the universe as a beginning. And we have a philosophical argument. And what's a philosophical argument? If the universe is eternal, meaning that we know the universe consists of space, time, and matter. So space, time, and matter. So the universe exists in a four-dimensional way. And so, if the universe was eternal, meaning that time would be eternal, right? So today would not exist. Because if we have, let's look at some numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we know that we have different types of infinities. So there are different types of infinities that exist. Imagine we are at number, let's use 7. So we are here. No, in time. If the universe infinitely existed, there would be an infinite number of times between 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6. And to be honest, we wouldn't even get to 2. It would just be straight infinite amount of number between 2. We are different types of infinity. What that means, today will not exist. Infinite amount of time. So infinity exists in maths and theory. But in terms of reality and concrete stuff, things that consist of components, that doesn't happen. Because if you think about it, all right, let me go a little further. It would mean that if something exists infinitely, it would stretch infinitely in the past if the universe existed. And so if you have infinite amount of time, then today would not exist. Today is just a finite amount of time. You're understanding? So just like your birthday, you can count that day, year because you're here today. It's a finite, but if it's infinite, you can't exhaust the number. You'll never reach to the present. So that's the philosophical argument, and this argument existed for a long time before we even realized that the universe had a beginning. So that's a philosophical argument pertaining to that the universe has a beginning, and also the scientific argument that was mentioned in the video. And the scientific argument is that the universe it's found out that the universe has expanded from a single point, which shows that it has had a beginning. And that single point was a finite time in the past of the universe. And so based on the cosmological constant, the background radiation, the CMB, cosmic background radiation that they found recently, a mapping of the different radiation that exists from a finite time back in the history of the universe, when the universe expanded. And based on the redshift, based on the second law of thermodynamics, they conclude that the universe began to exist. And so if we're talking to anybody or we have any questions about what are evidence to the what are evidence for God, the existence of God, the cosmological argument could be an argument. There are many other cosmological arguments that just face at the column of cosmological argument. Now, this argument does not say which God created the universe. And as we continue to come to this book, we'll find out more about that. But the cause of the universe, now, how do we get from premise, the last premise, which is a conclusion, therefore the universe has a cause to God? Could be a computer. I think Richard Dark and I think Peter Atkins once said I think it's Dr. Lennox said to him once that, I could be just a smart computer that built this. Why you have to say of God? And the important thing is that because you have space is finite, matter is finite, and time is finite. The thing that created the universe has to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. And so that fits the bill for God. God is spaceless. He fills the universe according to many scriptures. And God is not limited by time. He's omnipresent. He is omniscient, all-knowing. And also, He's everywhere. And so, we have to have a being that is spaceless, timeless, and immaterial to create the universe. Something that is outside of the universe to create the universe. A person that created the laptop is not in the laptop, right? He's outside of the laptop that created the laptop. So the cause has to be outside of the universe. it has to be supernatural, above natural. And natural is space, matter, and time. And so we spend a little time on this. So let's just, if there's any question you can ask before we move on to. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the reason I was on the computer was that I was trying to look up something about premises in my phone. So sometimes your premises can be correct,
Yes.
but they use like bad reason and still come around. So I'm looking at something here. It says that the first person, if it is snowing, then it must be cold outside, and then the second one says that it is cold outside, therefore it must be snowing. So therefore must also be the conclusion. But it is saying that, but clearly just because it is cold outside does not necessarily mean that it must be snowing. So even though the premises can be correct, if you use bad reason, it can still come to an incorrect.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think some point we're going to go in this book, hopefully, we're going to go through looking at premises. So that's true. So everything that a person's, when we often defend a point, it could be the food that we like, it could be why we're doing a certain course, it could be, defending ourselves against a partner. Let's say you have a partner and they believe you're cheating and you're defending yourself. We always present premises, reason for our conclusion. And in philosophy, they just formalize it. And so these premises can lead to a conclusion, but one, the premises can be incorrect or faulty. Two, our own reasoning
Can be faulty.
can be faulty or we don't
Where
think
the
that
premise is correct, but the reason is faulty.
yes, the reasoning is faulty. And I would love you to just mention that one more time for everyone, that example again.
Alright, so let me just state it again. So the example was that premise one was that if it is snowing, then it must be cold outside. And then the second premise was that it is cold outside. And then the conclusion is therefore it must be snowing. But the sentence after this said that, but clearly just because it is cold outside does not necessarily mean that it must be snowing. So this argument is invalid, even though the premises can be correct.
Good. And for these things, how we can test the soundness of a premise is we can look at the premise and investigate the premise and also our reasoning. Because even in one of those premises there, if there's other reason or grounds or evidence to think otherwise, then some of the premises will not be solved or the conclusion. And so we have things that we discussed briefly last week, Dr. Buckman looked at it, and it's called logical fallacies. And so that can also affect our reasoning. So we can have a good premise, but we can have logical fallacies in our reasoning in going through that. Dr. Buckman, you can
Right.
go ahead.
Yeah, what I noticed from that example that Rajni just gave is that the person kind of flipped or reversed the premise at the end. So at the beginning he said that when it's snowing it's cold. And then he used the last part of the premise saying it's cold, so it's snowing. So at the beginning he didn't say it's cold, so it must be snowing, but he ended up saying that when one condition in this order is true, that if it's snowing, it's cold. But then they concluded as though the only that if it is cold, it must be snowing, which was not the original premise. It's like they switched it.
Okay,
So
so reading up it before, it says that this is logical fallacy known as affirming the consequent. It's
affirming the
basically
consequent, right?
or that says if P then Q, but Q
Then
becomes
Q,
the
then
second,
B.
and
No,
then says
right,
therefore P.
right. So it's not always the same when when one condition is correct, that the reverse is always correct. So, yeah.
I was just trying to find an example where you have like two correct premises, but because of bad reasons, you can still end up with something wrong. So I chose this because it seemed like kind of close-ish.
Yeah, it was interesting. Thank you.
Yes, so it's good to test our arguments and see how they stand up well. And many persons who give reasons against the existence of God, they have premises, and they have their arguments, and it's good to test them, and even our own arguments to see if our reasoning are logical or faulty, or we have some fallacies. So, just to wrap up on the cosmological argument, if there is no more question, or just before I wrap up on the cosmological argument, all the theories that have been proposed for the universe that doesn't have an existence, then you can't even stay. You can't even stay.
Alright.
One of the arguments I'm looking at from the cosmological argument. Welcome. So, yes, we're glad to have you here. So, to wrap up on the cosmological argument, all of the other models that has been submitted by various scientists who are trying to go around the beginning of the universe. There are three scientists who proposed a theory. It's called Bode-Booth-Vilenkin theory. And based on this theory, is that all the other models they still fall into the same problem and it runs back to the beginning of the universe. So they cannot escape that. Even the multiverse, I think Dr. Buckland, that's Jay Buckland, I think he was mentioning something about that even the multiverse model still falls into the problem of the beginning of the universe. And so many said, the multiverse, use the multiverse as an explanation for the beginning of our universe. And they proposed a multiverse generator. Some have proposed that. The problem with that, remember, anything that created the universe must be what? Spaceless, timeless, and what? Immaterial. And so the multiverse generator is composed of parts. If it is natural, it cannot be the cause of the universe. And it's material. And if we don't have no infinite material, we don't see that exist in our universe. And so that means that the multiverse generator would have to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. And now we're playing with semantic, which is actually God we're talking about. This is actually God. And so the board belief theory has that no matter what model anybody propose or come up with, the universe has to have a beginning, according to that theory. And the theory is not limited only to theories that they come up with. No. It extends to even further models and theory. It's going to have that problem, the beginning of the universe. And so there's a lot of science behind it that I looked up. We won't go be bogged down by the science. Stephen?
I was thinking, matter, space, and time.
Mm-hmm.
All are coming from existence at once.
Yeah,
matter and space.
Mm-hmm.
What more time? When do you put it?
Yeah, where would you put it?
If you have matter, space, and time, it must be existence at once. Matter, space, and time. If you have matter and space, what more time? Where do you put it? If you have time and space, but no matter what you put there. So you have each of them have three of them have to be automatic. It has to be
at the same time.
Yes, at once.
That's a good point. So Stephen, for those who are on Zoom, Stephen was saying that it's highlighting the point of the importance of space, matter, space, time, everything coming to existence at the same time at once. Because if you have space and matter and no time, when it comes to existence, if you have matter and time and no space, where would you put it? And I love that. I love that how you put it. And this is why in the board theory kind of every science have a problem with that. And it's not only subjected to theories that are existing now, the steady state matter, the oscillating universe, and you name them all. They still have that problem to contend.
We should not understand it. The science breakdown that begins.
Where science breakdown?
Yes.
That's great, because it's right here at the singularity that you mentioned. Where they mentioned that everything started finite, and behind this science breakdown. So behind this singularity, there is nothing. And as I said, I would love to can write, a couple billion in a bank and just appear, but we don't experience that. That doesn't happen. Praise the name of that doesn't happen. And so this argument is very good. And many times we have a problem. Probably I should just stay a little bit on this argument because it seems very. But many times we're probably going to have to do a part two on the other things, the moral argument and the design. But this argument, the cosmological argument, which came in fact from a Muslim apologist and philosopher. And this is what he posited, a very good argument, and it's, as I said once more, it has been pushed heavily by William Lane Craig. So the cosmological arguments are good go-to argument to talk to persons, and many persons who we would face would be persons who are, have some knowledge about science, or that's their reason for not believing in God. And not just that, if anybody that is here who is science-minded, or will be watching who is science-minded, and you want to know, you're questioning the existence of God, is there evidences for God? The cosmological argument is a good argument, and as I said, I'm going to repeat what it said. It said, whatever begins to exist have a cause. Everything that we experience, it really has a cause. And there are philosophical and scientific evidence that the universe began to exist. The universe did exist. And because the universe exists, it has to have a cause. Why? I would love to answer that. Other than using the premise, like I want someone to come and to understand the conclusion. Why is it that because the universe begins to exist, it has a cause?
When you exist, you have to first not exist. That's kind of trivial.
Yes. So for you to exist, you have to first not exist. Okay, good.
You can let them develop the arguments. Go with the question. It's coming.
Oh, okay, so you're working through it, Stephen. All right. Anybody else? I know I'm asking a difficult thing without using my. You can paraphrase the premise if you want, but like a common sense, the universe begins to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Why do you think that? Like in your own words?
As I said before about the word purpose, so God has a purpose for everything, and without a purpose, or without a purpose, many things will come into existence. And so the word cause, as I said, is talking about being, but I'm saying here that cause can also mean purpose.
So I think John is presenting an argument based on contingency, which is good, also a good argument. We'll look at that at another time.
Something can be logical, but it's incorrect. So it can be illogical and it's correct.
What do you mean by that?
Because as human beings, we want to know that we come from somewhere. I want to know that we come somewhere. I want to know that I go somewhere. I want to know that. What if nothing doesn't exist outside of that? I get bothered. So we feel nice to know that universe must exist from somewhere. What if it didn't exist from nowhere? What if it was just with us there's time, with God there's no time. But you and I cannot think without time because we are part of time, we flow with time.
Okay.
And time now is moving one direction. We go with it also. Another part, we die. So we go with it and then we stop. So we are trying to understand something that's beyond our humanity. It's outside of ourselves. And I don't think the answer exists because of the limitations. Our mind is infinite. The mind is infinite. What we are in limits us. It limits us.
So can we know truth?
Truth is relative. Truth is relative. Because
Also, you believe truth is
truth, yeah, is fundamental truth, good and right and wrong. It's there, but some deviations of truth is relative. So
1 minute, Stephen. I want to know, are you guys hearing Stephen? Okay.
Mostly, yes.
Mostly. All right, I'm gonna bring it a bit closer.
what does it
Let me
mean?
ask you a question.
Trying to understand the creator is infinite and we are finite beings. To try to understand an infinite being and we are finite, that by definition is flawed. So even if the results are correct, if you, scientifically, it still is flawed.
Okay.
We're trying to go outside of our domain to understand stuff which by definition Don't make sense.
Also, you're saying that
There are limitations.
so correct me if I'm wrong. There will be limitations in some of our knowledge and some of our arguments per se, and limitation in knowing certain things.
Yeah,
Limitation in knowing certain things. So you're saying that correct me if I'm wrong, there is truth and we can know certain things, but there are limitations because we're entering into the sphere that is above our experience.
They're going to observe something. To observe it is flawed because when you study something, you have to not. When you study something, you can't really touch it too much, like really biology, right? So you have to observe from a distance. So the more we interact with it, is more we put ourselves into it. So our observation is going to be based on self also.
All right, so let me clarify. There are some scientific theories.
Okay, I can answer that because
Okay. So Reynolds is going to answer it.
Yeah, so I can answer that. So in like it's known as qualitative research. Because what I'm familiar with geography, you have two main things. You have like participants and non-participant like observation. So essentially, if you need to like interview people, you can either like go up to them with like questions and so on and speak to them. But when sometimes when people see like cameras and questionnaires and so on, then get afraid, and they don't want to give like certain answers, maybe they feel embarrassed or so on. So sometimes they have to like secretly watch them from a distance, get like true accurate information. So I can understand what he's talking about.
So in other words, what I can gather that Stephen and probably Ronald adding, just correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're saying that science is not the ultimate way to truth then. Because some of the science will be built on assumption and human perception.
We will never know what ultimate truth. We will never know because of our finiteness. We will never know. Can I say finiteness?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We will never know. We will never know.
So Stephen is saying that we would never know.
We are confined to a location. We are confined based on coordinates. We are confined to this point in time. We are confined to a region of space.
So because we're confined to a region. So, because we're confined to a region in space, we are finite, we won't know ultimate truth. Dr. Buckland, do any of you have anything to say to disagree? Oh, sorry, Steve, probably we never get to introduce you. This is an open forum where we just talk and discuss philosophy. So Stephen just came in to a bucket of water and he decided to stay with us.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
all right, hi, Stephen. All right, so I just wanted to clarify to see if I'm understanding it correctly. It seems that you're saying because of our limitations, we can never know anything for certain or ultimate truth if there is no way for the human mind to grasp absolute truth. Or am I mistaken?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay. Do you believe that that is an absolutely true statement that you just made, that you know for certain that we can never know something for certain?
We cannot know for sure. Nothing is absolutely true in a sense. To be honest, we can't know for sure.
So nothing is absolutely true?
Nothing, no.
Okay, well, I think that you basically just contradicted yourself because you're making a claim of what you think is reality that is not provable in its own way. And so from what I've known in philosophy, there's a point to which that you cannot live without accepting some axioms or some fundamental things as true. And so even if you think nothing can be known for certain, and you are holding that statement as an absolute.
Logical and truthful is different, right?
Didn't hear.
Logical and truthful is different, right?
Logic and truth?
Logical and being truthful is two different things, right?
Logic, I don't know, I'm not hearing. Logic and truth?
Truthful, right? Likewise, something illogical, but it is correct.
Okay, I'm hearing you say logic and truth are different. Is that what you said?
They're not the same.
Yes, logic does not have to be true, but what is truth for you?
I'm going to define it based on my humanity. So I'm saying that the reason why I came up with this concept is because of what exists. We cannot find a solution for this issue because fundamentally we weren't created to. There's no solution for it because you want to tell me so many brilliant minds and they can't find an answer for this. No man, something is wrong. Something is wrong with fundamental argument.
Okay, so what I just wanted to point out, which I found curious as well, you mentioned about we're not created to, but I also wanted to get back to the question about for you to have any type of belief system and you're holding on to it to say we cannot have any type of knowledge of ultimate truth. You can't get away from the fact that you are still holding to a way of a worldview.
I
And
have to.
so,
I have to. I have to. By definition, I have to.
right, exactly what I'm saying. So, um, there's no way to really get around the fact that we have to have some type of absolute belief system, which may or may not be true, but everything is not relative, and you cannot say that everything is unknown when you are also thinking that you know that everything is unknown. Everything cannot be known for certain. Nothing can be known for certain, if you get what I'm saying. I don't know if Mr. Buckland wants to add anything to that, but
Yes.
I think the nature of truth is good. Will take up like the entire an entire session, which I think probably we can plan very soon. So I'd love to have
I take it
maybe
from
a debate session where we examine our own premises. But yeah.
Yes. I'd like to add something to what Sarah has said. Let me begin with the reasoning that God has to be timeless, spaceless, and immaterial. In the realm of the material, and in the realm of time, and in the realm of space, there is limitation. But in the realm of the immaterial, the timeless, and the spaceless, then there is no limitation. In other words, we're looking at someone who caused the universe to come into existence as someone who is different from the universe, someone that knows more than what we know in the universe. And there are certain truths that we would not be able to know for ourselves just by looking at the universe. There are certain truths that the person who is not limited in knowledge, who caused everything to come into existence, will have to make known to us. And just to illustrate that, allow me to read just a few verses here from Matthew chapter 11 and verse 27. All things are delivered unto me of my Father, that's Jesus speaking, and no man knoweth the Son but the Father, neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. So there are certain truths that we cannot find out for ourselves, but which God or Jesus, his Son, will have to make known to us. And that is where the Bible comes in. The Bible says that it is inspired by God. That means God spoke these words, and the human authors he chose to write down his words wrote them down. There are certain truths we cannot discover in a natural way that takes supernatural revelation. And so I would not conclude that we cannot know absolutely certain things. I will claim that our knowledge is limited, but there is a supernatural being who caused everything to come into existence, who has chosen to reveal certain secret truths that we would not otherwise find out on our own. Okay, and that is where the Bible comes in. All right, thank you.
Yeah. And I think that we'd probably have to have future sessions on why we believe that what the Bible is claiming is actually reliable, because it's very important to bridge that gap for those who are not really at that stage yet to believe the Bible's claims, right? So
Oh, yeah, would love to dive into questions about that, but we have a couple minutes remaining. So at this time, if anybody has any other comments, I think you're raising your hand. That one. Okay, so we will bring part, this session to a close.
I have one more
And
question.
oh, you have one more question.
I do. So, did you always believe in God? And if not, what changed your mind?
Oh no, I was an atheist. I didn't always believe that there was a supreme being out there, a supernatural being. Unlike some persons who believe that, oh, I don't know if a
Can't
God
hear
or if
you.
a father. But some persons would say that probably there's some supernatural or some energy out there that create. At one point, I did not believe none of that. That the universe, was there. There was no God whatsoever. Um,
You chipped out, Hodari. Hello? Can't hear. Oh no. Um, okay, it seems that Hodari's battery died. I'm not sure if anyone is able to connect to the Zoom to allow Hodari to just continue speaking. Well, for those online, um, we're just having a few technical difficulties, but I'm very interested to hear this testimony of what caused this former atheist, to actually start to believe in God and actually have faith in the Bible specifically. So we're trying to resolve our technical difficulties. Uh, but if we do not get on there, we just hope that you will join us for our next meeting, same time, for the same space at Chosen to Glow Ministries YouTube channel. Yeah, I hope that you found this informative, and we'll see. Just give me a minute and we'll see if we're able to actually get the story finished and conclude this afternoon's program. All right, so it seems that we're connected again to the club. Let's see if we're able to actually just conclude with hearing the testimony here, if possible. You can let me know, Mr. Reynolds.
Right, everyone.
Okay.
Apologize. We had a little technical difficulty.
Okay. Can you speak a bit louder? I'm hearing you, but can you speak a bit louder?
Is it better
Or
now?
yes, a little better. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, I was saying we apologize for that. We had a little technical difficulty. And so what I was saying is that yes, at one point of my life I was an atheist and was set out to prove that God didn't exist. It wasn't though I wasn't the militant type who would fight people if you believe. If you want to believe, that's okay. But if you are willing to engage in a conversation, then I'll prove to you, I believe that God didn't exist. And upon research, the cosmological argument was one argument, and also the moral argument was one that really led me, and some experiences that I had. I remember earlier in the presentation I mentioned that an evidence for God is also experiential evidences, and I had my supernatural experiences coupled with all these other arguments that really changed my mind. And the more I research and dive down into proving that God didn't exist, the reverse happened. And so I was really sincere, and I had a mindset that, okay, I'm going to follow where the evidence leads. And so I'm going to be as neutral, as sincere as possible to prove that God didn't exist. And upon those research, upon those plowing and investigation and personal experiences, the reverse happened to me. I realized that God doesn't exist, and not just God exists. After I find out that God exists, it's also which God exists, and it led me to where I am at now. So in the future, we probably can go in depth about that, about the whole journey and how I left from being an atheist, not an agnostic, but a fully blown atheist, to a person who believes in a creator now, and that believe that that creator is personal. Yes. So
Thank you, Hodari, and thank you, Sarah. My wife, Mrs. Buckland, would like to say something about knowledge and absolute knowledge. Briefly, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to make a few points about absolute belief. In the Christian realm, to me, the Bible does not endorse the fact that we cannot have absolute belief, because the fact that we are going to be connected to God, we have to believe that He exists. It's not something that we are going to waver. It has to be not only a firm belief, but an absolute belief that there is a God who created the heavens and the earth and all that is within. So we were made with a capacity to have absolute belief in someone or something that exists. And for a Christian as Christians, we ought to realize that when someone says to us that there is nothing that we can really absolutely believe, we have to reject that, because as Christians, we have to have absolute belief. We cannot waver that is there a God, is there not a God. Our belief not only should be firm, but should be absolute, that we can stand firmly and say we know, we have experienced God, and we know that there is a God, and this is my absolute conviction that there is a God. We have that capacity, and so we must hold on to that and not let anyone try to tell us that we don't have the capacity to believe that there is things out there that is absolute, and that we can believe and know that there are things that are absolute.
Okay. Thank you so much. Right. And thanks also to Hodari and for Rajni for facilitating this, that Hodari's testimony. What I will say as well is that, as we know, our club is open to persons who are not necessarily Christians and those who are searching. So I definitely appreciate the contribution and the encouragement to let us realize that even when we believe that there is nothing for certain or nothing that we can know for certain, we end up holding on to an absolute belief system. So I don't think in life, one of the things one of the criteria that you can use to test how watertight an argument is it self-contradictory? Is it going to be like breaking down its own self? Can you live by it? And when you test that argument to think that everything is relative or you can't have absolute knowledge, I think it does break down itself. So I'd encourage Stephen and whoever else, including ourselves, to continue to keep searching and, you know, to try and find or come closer to the truth. And I appreciate those who have come today, and especially Hodari for a great meeting today. And I look forward to future meetings and inviting those who are here to come back again, and invite your friends. Those who can't come in person can join us online. We will be showing some films in between, and yeah, continue to search for truth. All right, so have a wonderful rest of your afternoon. And thanks again, Hodari. Thanks, Rajni, and all those who are here. I'm going to stop recording and then probably speak a little bit after. So goodbye to those who are maybe listening in.